Good afternoon, gang. Hope you're good. As you can see, not the most glamorous backdrop. And also, as soon as you've got a laptop on your actual lap, then you look absolutely massive and fat and it shows all of your chins. So sorry about that. It also means that, just to explain why I'm here, I'm out the back of our fire exit on our first floor. So I'm on a flat roof out the back of Choose Health HQ. This is what you've got. Shiny back of the door that's a metal fire exit because it makes the gym hot. I've been kicked out because we've got all these students and a marketing team. They're like three of them that are learning about marketing. They've commandeered my office for a bit to make some phone calls in private, and so I'm out here, including some road noise, to just bail on this live stream. If the noise is bad or if the signal's bad or whatever, you just got to let me know whether or not it's coming through, and I will bail and just wrap it up. There's no need for me to force the issue, but it felt like there was no need to miss a broadcast. I've been looking forward to this one for a little while, so I didn't want to skip it just because I didn't have anywhere to sit. So hopefully this is coming through loud and clear. I'm not managing to get the but I have got this fancy caption that I'm trying to remember to sing with social prescribing. So welcome to the episode. I'm Jack Chew, 12:30 to 1 o'clock on weekdays. We chew it over, talk about all things MSK practice usually, but also how it intersects with culture, with healthcare widely, and just generally speaking, get an opportunity to chat to you all about things that matter, hopefully. And most of you seem to agree that there's lots of good stuff going on at the moment, and we've had a lot of interaction on these feeds. Yes, some tuning live, which is brilliant. I love that. I love your engagement live, but then also the feedback that you've been sending over after the fact, people listening on their commutes the next day or the weekends or mowing the lawn or what have you, including on the audio feed. We do put this out as a podcast as well. If you're tuning into this on YouTube, but you'd rather it be on Facebook, then it's there as well. If you're tuning into this on Periscope, on Twitter, then it's also across those other mediums, LinkedIn, that sort of thing. So, get this where you want it rather than where you feel obliged to. For some reason, that the chat function I can't see at the moment. It's still showing itself as, I don't know if there's an issue with that. I've just ended up selecting chat overlay too, but yeah, for some reason, if you are posting comments and I can't seem to see them at the moment, which means annoyingly, if there's you guys are telling me road noise is unbearable and I should bail and that the backdrop is so ugly that I shouldn't be bothering, then I'm not able to see that right now, which is annoying, but this is where you've got to let me know. I've just gone onto Facebook on my phone and it seems that everything seems to be working all right. So, but do shout if social prescribing is really relevant all the time, but particularly at the moment as we emerge from these weird lockdown situations we've found ourselves in. To define terms for you to start with, if you haven't heard of it before, then it's well worth looking up to get a much more thorough definition and analysis than I'm going to give. But in essence, it's sort of prescriptions that aren't medical prescriptions or even exercise prescriptions specifically. It's kind of a social intervention whereby, say, examples being that you're then prescribed a walking group or you've prescribed some community engagement style talking therapies in a group setting, or there's all sorts of different examples whereby it's a non-medical prescription based on the principle that you're trying to help people holistically rather than just medically. And you can imagine in MSK practice, that's super, super prescient. And so I'm probably butchering what might be a more obvious definition. And as I say, therefore, go and look it up. But what I wanted to discuss with you, and as the title suggests, it's not just clickbait, there is a problem with it. And the problem is that it doesn't have a lot of evidence to support it, right? It sounds nice in principle. The mechanisms make sense. The ways in which we want to demedicalize interventions in care within MSK, within primary care. Someone presents with a complex set of low grade, say, pain, depression, anxiety, especially the reclusive nature that it's turned us all into because of the lockdowns and stuff. As the world reemerges, instead of them being given some paracetamol, naproxen, sertraline, they kind of citalopram, they kind of give then an opportunity to do something that might be closer to not just the symptoms but also the problem is the theory. So if they were given some of those examples that I mentioned before to try and correct for that, if they're accepting, like, I feel lonely, then any sort of social prescription that then engages them with their community better is a smart one. But you then have this problem whereby people like me banging the drum for evidence-informed practice and making sure that we're not just doing things because they romantically sound pleasant, but what is the evidential backing before we actually proliferate them particularly, or support them with public funds, available on the NHS type stuff, is like, there should be a barrier there really to entry because it needs to be justified. And so the problem with social prescribing, the problem that social prescribing has at the moment, is it doesn't necessarily have a robust and translatable evidence base across the piece. There's some great examples and there's some great evidence to support those examples, and they are demographically and geographically specific in such a way that sometimes it's difficult to be really clumsy for you to then imply that. It's a bit like when you get some good evidence to support an intervention in more specific in MSK practice on patellofemoral pain, and then you translate that across to ACL. It's like, well, that's not clever. Or for it to be in a adolescent females population for PFP, and we were to then translate that to a more elderly population of PFP, it's like the specifics of that difference matter, and you can't paint with too broad a brush when you do have an evidential backing. So it's not for a second am I suggesting that there's absolutely no glimmers of hope or evidence at all or supportive documented evidence for social prescribing. It's more that you can't paint with too broad a brush. I think it'd be hypocritical for us to do so. Shit, I'm getting rained on. I didn't see that coming. I've come out here, I've even got my shorts on. Let's see if that gets any heavier. I might go and see if we're loiter in the gym. I don't know if there's a patient in there. Maybe I'll do it there. But what am I saying? I think that this is where I suppose the problem with social prescribing, my problem with social prescribing, is I still support it with a full throat, because I think that how else are you going to really understand its implementation evidence, its application across the landscape of difference? You've got to embed it, at least in pilot format, and make it quite widespread and used by therapists and GPs and demedicalize a number of interventions in order for it to be. I don't think it is the true cart before the horse that sometimes happens. Like when we come up with a new shiny idea syringe and we inject it into people to solve their back pain or their OA, that's experimentation that sometimes isn't justified in mechanism. But yeah, you need to make sure there's not just safety but efficacy-based trialing that's done. Social prescribing, you can't test that in a lab at all. You can't really, apart from theoretic mechanistic evidence, you can't nail that ahead of time. You've got to try it to test it, and that doesn't necessarily mean for trial data. You almost need that audit level data to proliferate for it to then be used properly. And I think that that's what I'm fascinated by, is that I don't know how much hypocrisy there might be for me to hold injectables to a different standard than I do, say, social prescribing interventions, for it to be used in, say, the NHS in primary care, pre-gold standard trial-based or even evaluation-based evidence. Because I feel like it has to, the only way I can conceive of really testing it beyond mechanism and it sounding pleasant is to just do something, do a version of it, do a timed control on it, especially against waiting lists or something like that you can do at the moment. I feel like that's the only way we can truly then give it a whirl and to truly know. Now, we've got to then remain humble and not get romantically attached to it in theory when in practice it really struggles to justify itself, justify its own cost. So we've got to be mature about this. You've got to recognise at what interval do we need to then evaluate it more carefully. And that's where I admittedly would say that we could make the mistake in principle. We like it enough in practice. We like the ability to refer for it. That then if the evidence comes back to say actually why or it's not cost effective and the like, then maturity to drop it. Or to refine it, or to make sure that we're not just becoming what we've criticised elsewhere. You know, we've kind of criticised medical. You've got this sort of more specialised practice, kind of like intuitively. If we just sort of that's then the norm, and it doesn't have to meet it, then I think we could end up making a date that I think that would be really silly. One of the things that I want to do, to be honest, is draw your attention, guys, and I'm really not getting the chat coming through. So I'm going to press refresh, and you might lose me for a couple of minutes. No, it won't be a couple of minutes, 30 seconds. So please just stay with me. If I'm longer than 20 seconds, then we're going to just bail the feed. But I'm press refresh on a couple of things. I'll be back in it.